They said she was foolish. They said she was weak. When Clara signed the divorce papers and walked away from a $10 billion fortune without taking a single cent, the tabloids called her the penniless ex-wife. Her husband, tech mogul Michael Sterling, laughed all the way to the bank, thinking he had won the ultimate victory. He thought he had buried her. But he forgot one thing. Silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's the calm before the storm. 6 months later, Clara didn't just return to court. She arrived on the tarmac in a Gulfstream G700 owned by the one man Michael feared more than bankruptcy. This is the story of how the woman who left with nothing came back to take everything. The air inside the penthouse at 432 Park Avenue was always thin, recycled, and smelled faintly of expensive leather and ozone. It was the smell of money, or so Michael liked to say. Tonight, however, it smelled like betrayal. Clara stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the Manhattan grid. From the 92nd floor, the city looked like a circuit board, cold and mechanical. Behind her, the clinking of ice against crystal broke the silence. "Stop being dramatic, Clara. It's a standard separation agreement. My lawyers at Skadden Arps drafted it. It's ironclad, but fair," Michael said. His voice didn't carry a hint of remorse, only the impatience of a CEO dealing with a lingering budget variance. Clara turned. Michael sat on the bespoke Italian sofa, sipping a Macallan 25. He wasn't looking at her. He was scrolling through his phone, checking the Asian markets. He looked every bit the master of the universe the Wall Street Journal had dubbed him last month. Beside him on the coffee table lay a thick stack of documents, bound in a blue folder. "Fair?" Clara asked softly. "You're offering me the summer cottage in Maine and a monthly stipend for 3 years. In exchange, I sign an NDA that forbids me from ever mentioning—" She paused, her throat tight. "From mentioning Jessica." Michael finally looked up. His eyes, once the warm blue she had fallen in love with at a coffee shop in Boston 10 years ago, were now like chips of ice. "Jessica is my vice president of communications. She is vital to the company. I won't have your jealousy affecting the IPO. The board is sensitive, Clara. We go public in 3 months. She's your mistress, Michael. She has been for 2 years. She's a partner." "Something you ceased to be a long time ago," Michael snapped, standing up. He walked over to the table and tapped the folder. "Look, you can fight this. You can hire some ambulance chaser, drag this out for 2 years, and watch me bury you in legal fees until you're selling your jewelry to buy groceries. Or you can sign. Take the house in Maine. Disappear quietly. Keep your dignity." Clara looked at the man she had supported when he was coding in a basement, the man whose first pitch decks she had proofread until her eyes blurred, whose confidence she had rebuilt every time an investor slammed the door. He had erased her. To him, she was just legacy code, obsolete, and needing to be purged. She walked to the table. Michael smirked, expecting the tears, the screaming, the negotiation. He was ready for a fight. He thrived on conflict. Clara picked up the Mont Blanc pen lying on the table. She flipped to the final page of the decree. "I don't want the house in Maine," she said, her voice steady. Michael frowned. "The condo in Miami, then? It has a better view, but the property taxes are—" "I don't want the condo. I don't want the stipend." Michael froze. "What are you talking about?" "I want nothing," Clara said. "I will sign your papers. I will sign your NDA. But I am striking the clause regarding spousal support and asset division. I am leaving with what I came in with." Michael laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "You're bluffing. You haven't worked in 7 years, Clara. You have no savings. You think playing the martyr will make me chase you. It won't." "I'm not playing," she whispered. She quickly struck a line through the asset section, initialed it, and then signed the bottom of the document with a flourish. She capped the pen and set it down. You can keep the money, Michael. Every cent. You can keep the penthouse, the Hamptons estate, and the jet. You can keep Jessica. She pulled her wedding ring off her finger. It was a 4-carat emerald cut, perfect and cold. She placed it on top of the blue folder. But you don't get to keep my respect, and you don't get to buy my silence. I'm giving it to you for free, so you owe me nothing. She turned and walked toward the private elevator. Clara, Michael called out, confused, his confidence shaken for the first time. If you walk out that door with nothing, don't think you can come crawling back when the credit card bills hit. I'll crush you. The elevator doors opened. Clara stepped in and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors slid shut, she saw Michael standing there, holding his scotch, looking not like a victor, but like a man trying to figure out where the error in the code was. She walked out of 432 Park Avenue with 2 suitcases and called a yellow cab. She didn't look back. 3 months later. The radiator in the 4th floor walk-up in Astoria, Queens, hissed and clanked, a constant reminder of how far Clara had fallen. The apartment was the size of her old master bathroom. The paint was peeling, and the view was a brick wall belonging to a laundromat. Clara sat at a wobbly IKEA table, staring at her laptop screen. Her bank account balance was flashing red, $142.50. She had applied for 30 jobs in the last month. Executive assistant roles, office management, even basic copy editing. She had a degree in art history from Columbia, but a 7-year gap on her resume labeled housewife was proving to be a career death sentence. But there was something else, something more malicious at play. She opened a new tab and typed her name into Google. The results made her stomach turn. Top result, page 6. The gold digger who fled. Why Clara Sterling abandoned her tech mogul husband before the IPO. Second result, Daily Mail. Sources close to Michael Sterling claim. Ex-wife demanded $50 million before disappearing with secret lover. Michael wasn't just content with the divorce, he was salting the earth. His PR team, led by Jessica Vane, had spun a narrative so tight and vicious that Clara had become a pariah. They claimed she had left him. They claimed she was unstable. They claimed she had embezzled household funds. It was a lie, all of it. But Michael controlled the narrative because Michael owned the media contacts. He was the darling of the fintech world. Paystream, his company, was about to go public, and he needed to look like the victim of a chaotic marriage to gain the sympathy of conservative investors. Clara closed the laptop, fighting back tears. She had sold her designer handbags to pay the deposit on this apartment. She had sold her Cartier watch to pay the first 2 months of rent. Now, she was down to nothing. Her phone buzzed. It was a notification from LinkedIn, another rejection. Thank you for your interest in the junior editor position. However, she put her head in her hands. Maybe Michael was right. Maybe she was weak. She had accepted nothing out of pride, thinking it would free her. Instead, it had just made her an easy target. Without money for a lawyer, she couldn't sue him for defamation. She was trapped. A heavy knock on her door made her jump. Her heart raced. Had Michael found her? Was he sending process servers to harass her again? She crept to the door and looked through the peephole. Standing in the dim, flickering hallway was not a process server. It was a man in an immaculate, charcoal 3-piece suit. He looked out of place against the peeling wallpaper, like a diamond in a gutter. He was older, perhaps in his 60s, with silver hair and a posture that suggested military discipline. He held a leather briefcase. Clara hesitated, then unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door a crack, keeping the chain on. "Clara Sterling?" the man asked. His accent was British, clipped and precise. "It's Clara Jenkins now," she said defensively. "Who are you?" "My name is Mr. Thorne. I represent a mutual acquaintance. May I come in?" "I don't know any Mr. Thorne. If Michael sent you, tell him I have nothing left to take." Mr. Thorne allowed a small, compassionate smile to touch his lips. "Mr. Sterling did not send me. In fact, Mr. Sterling would be very distressed to know I am here. I work for the Graham estate." Clara froze. The name triggered a memory, buried deep under years of gala dinners and charity auctions. Graham. "Sir Alistair Graham," she whispered. "Precisely," Thorne said. "He has been looking for you for 6 months, Miss Jenkins. It seems you are a difficult woman to find when you don't want to be found. He read the articles in the Post. He found the narrative inconsistent with the woman he remembers." Clara undid the chain and opened the door. Thorne stepped into the tiny apartment. He didn't look around with judgment. He looked around with a quiet intensity. "Why is Sir Alistair looking for me?" Clara asked, motioning for him to take the only chair. She remained standing. "Because, Miss Jenkins, 10 years ago, before you were Mrs. Sterling, you were a volunteer at the chaotic aftermath of the G20 summit riots in London. You pulled an elderly man out of a burning sedan when his security detail had been scattered. You stayed with him until the paramedics arrived. You gave the police a fake name because you didn't want the attention, and then you vanished." Clara nodded slowly. "I remember. He was having a heart attack. I just did CPR until the ambulance came." "You saved the life of the majority shareholder of Graham Heavy Industries," Thorne corrected. "Sir Alistair never forgot the young American woman with the red scarf. It took his private intelligence team a decade to match your description and biometric profile from street cameras to Clara Sterling. He intended to thank you years ago, but he saw you were married to Michael Sterling. He assumed you were happy and wealthy, so he kept his distance." Thorne placed the briefcase on the table and clicked the latches open. "However," Thorne continued, his voice dropping an octave, "when the news broke of your divorce, and specifically the terms of your divorce, Sir Alistair became suspicious. He had his team look into Michael Sterling's finances. Not the public books, Clara. The real books." Clara frowned. "Michael is greedy, but he's not a criminal." Thorne pulled out a single sheet of paper and slid it across the table. It was a bank transfer record from a shell company in the Cayman Islands. "Michael Sterling didn't just build Paystream on his own code," Thorne said. "He built it using a proprietary algorithm he stole from a defunct subsidiary of Graham Industries during a joint venture 7 years ago. He buried the theft. But more importantly, he buried the assets." Thorne looked Clara dead in the eye. "You signed away your rights to his known assets. But under international law, and specifically New York state equitable distribution laws, if one party conceals assets during a divorce proceeding, the entire settlement can be voided, and the penalty usually involves the concealing party forfeiting 100% of the hidden assets to the spouse." Clara picked up the paper. The numbers were staggering. $300 million parked in an account named Vane Holdings. "Vane," Clara breathed. "Jessica." "Exactly," Thorne said. "He's moving the money to her to hide it from the IPO auditors. He thinks you are broken, and voiceless. He thinks you are irrelevant." Thorne stood up and buttoned his jacket. "Sir Alistair has a proposition. He is currently in Zurich. He would like to offer you the services of his legal team, specifically the firm of Quinn Emanuel. He wants to fly you to Europe to brief you on the evidence we have gathered." Clara looked around her tiny, sad apartment. She looked at the laptop where the world was calling her a gold digger. Then she looked at the document in her hand. "How do I get to Zurich?" she asked. "I can't even afford a subway ticket." Thorne smiled, and this time it was a genuine grin. "Miss Jenkins, Sir Alister does not expect you to fly commercial. There is a car waiting downstairs. It will take us to Teterboro Airport. The jet is fueled and waiting." Clara felt a spark ignite in her chest, a fire she hadn't felt since the days she helped build Michael's empire. She grabbed her coat. "Let's go," she said. The ride to Teterboro Airport was wrapped in a heavy, suffocating silence, broken only by the rhythmic thrum-thrum of the Maybach's tires on the wet asphalt. Clara sat in the back, her fingers gripping the worn fabric of her coat, a cheap replacement she'd bought at a thrift store after pawning her Burberry trench. The leather seat beneath her felt alien, a ghost of a life she had supposedly left behind. Mr. Thorne sat opposite her, reading a dossier by the soft glow of a reading light. He didn't speak, sensing that Clara needed the quiet to reassemble the fragments of her reality. When the car glided onto the tarmac, the world outside was a blur of rain and runway lights. But there, gleaming under the floodlights like a silver bullet, sat the Gulfstream G700. It was immense, a machine designed not just for travel, but for dominion over time and space. The engines were already whining, a high-pitched scream that vibrated in Clara's chest. "After you, Miss Jenkins," Thorne said, opening the door as the car came to a halt. Clara stepped out into the cold drizzle, shivering. A flight attendant in a pristine navy uniform was waiting at the bottom of the stairs with an umbrella. As Clara ascended the steps, she felt a strange sensation. Not excitement, but a terrifying sense of vertigo. She was ascending from the gutter to the stratosphere in the span of an hour. The interior of the jet was warmer than any room she had been in for months. It smelled of white tea and mahogany. There were no rows of cramped seats. Instead, there was a living area with cream-colored divans, a dining table set with crystal, and a large monitor displaying the flight path to Zurich. "Can I get you anything, Mum?" "Champagne? Scotch?" the attendant asked, as Clara sank into a swivel seat that felt like a cloud. Clara looked at the crystal decanters. Michael always drank Scotch. He said it made him look like a serious man. "Water," Clara said, her voice raspy. "Ice water and black coffee. I need to be awake." Thorne sat across from her, buckling his seatbelt. The jet began to taxi, the movement smooth and predatory. "You're wondering why you," Thorne said gently, closing his dossier. "You're wondering why Sir Alister would go to this expense for a woman he met once, 10 years ago, for 20 minutes. "It crossed my mind," Clara said, watching the lights of New Jersey streak past the window. "Rich men don't do favors. They make investments. What is the return on investment on me, Mr. Thorne?" Thorne smiled, a genuine expression that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "You are sharper than Mr. Sterling gave you credit for. You are correct. This is an investment, but not in money. Sir Alister has enough money to buy God if God were for sale. He is investing in justice. He has a particular distaste for thieves, and Michael Sterling is a thief." The plane surged forward, the G-force pressing Clara back into the leather. Within seconds, the dark, rainy sprawl of New York dropped away, replaced by the velvet black of the night sky. They were airborne. Once they reached cruising altitude, Thorne unbuckled and moved to the seat beside her. He opened the briefcase again and laid out 3 photos. The first was of Michael, smiling at a gala, his arm around Jessica Vane. Jessica looked radiant, triumphant. She was wearing a diamond necklace, the very necklace Michael had told Clara was too expensive for her birthday last year. The second photo was a document, a patent filing. "Look at the date," Thorne commanded. Clara squinted. October 2016. And look at the author of the code structure in the appendix. Clara's breath hitched. It says R. Sterling. Read the comments in the code, Clara. The marginalia. Clara leaned in. The code was familiar. Painfully familiar. It was the logic tree for a predictive transaction algorithm. And there, buried in the syntax, was a comment line. Check flow for redundancy. SJ. SJ, Clara whispered. Clara Jenkins. That's my initial. That's my code. She remembered it vividly. It was a rainy Tuesday in 2016. Michael was panicking because his beta test was failing. Clara had stayed up for 48 hours straight, debugging, rewriting, and streamlining the entire backend. She had fixed it. She had saved him. He patented your work, Thorne said, his voice hard as iron. He claimed sole inventorship. Paystream is built on your intellect, Clara. He didn't just hide assets during the divorce. He built his entire empire on intellectual property theft from his own wife. Clara felt a wave of nausea, followed immediately by a cold, burning rage. It wasn't the money. It was the erasure. He had stolen her mind, sold it to the world, and then convinced her she was worthless. He told me I was obsolete, she said, her voice trembling. He told me I didn't understand the business anymore. He lied, Thorne said. He was afraid of you. He knew that if you ever realized you were the architect, you would own him. That is why he isolated you. That is why he destroyed your reputation. He had to break you so you wouldn't look at the blueprints. Thorne poured her a cup of steaming coffee and placed it in her shaking hands. Sleep now, Clara, he said softly. We land in Zurich in 6 hours. You need your strength. When you wake up, you are no longer the ex-wife. You are the architect coming to collect her due. Clara turned her head to the window, staring out at the stars. They looked closer here. Reachable. She didn't sleep. She sat there for 6 hours, watching the Atlantic pass beneath her, letting the rage crystallize into something harder, something useful. Zurich was cold, a crisp, biting cold that cleared the lungs. The car that met them at the private terminal was a Bentley Mulsanne, dark green and imposing. It drove them away from the city, winding up into the hills overlooking Lake Zurich, where the houses were not just homes, but fortresses of old money. They arrived at a wrought-iron gate that swung open silently. The estate was vast, a 19th-century chateau that looked like it had weathered wars and revolutions without losing a single slate tile. Thorne led Clara through a cavernous hallway lined with oil paintings of severe-looking men and women. They entered a library that smelled of old paper and burning wood. A fire roared in a stone hearth large enough to stand in. Sitting in a wheelchair by the fire, with a tartan blanket over his legs, was Sir Alistair Graham. He was thinner than Clara remembered from that chaotic day in London. His skin was translucent like parchment, and his hands trembled slightly as they rested on the armrests. But his eyes, steely grey and fiercely intelligent, were untouched by age. "The girl with the red scarf?" Alistair rasped. He didn't smile, but his expression was one of deep approval. "You look tired, my dear. Life has been bruising you." "It has," Clara admitted, stepping closer. "Thank you for bringing me here, Sir Alistair." "Don't thank me yet." He waved a hand dismissively. "I haven't done anything but pay for jet fuel. Sit." Clara sat in a wing-back chair opposite him. Thorne stood by the door, a silent sentinel. "Thorne showed you the patent?" Alistair asked. He did. "And the Cayman accounts?" "Yes." Alistair leaned forward, the firelight dancing in his eyes. "Michael Sterling is a fool, a dangerous fool, but a fool nonetheless. He made the classic mistake of the nouveau riche. He thought that because he had the money, he had the power. He forgot that money is just ammunition. Intelligence is the gun. You, Clara, are the gun. He has a team of lawyers, Sir Alistair, the best in New York. Skadden, Wachtel. They will bury me in paperwork. Even with your help, it could take years. We aren't going to sue him for the money, Clara, Alistair said, a wicked glint appearing in his eye. Not initially. Clara frowned. I don't understand. If we sue for the money now, he will settle. He will give you 50 million, maybe 100, just to make you go away before the IPO. He will write a check, and he will win. Is that what you want? A check? Clara thought about the penthouse. She thought about Jessica wearing her life like a costume. She thought about the smear articles calling her a gold digger. No, Clara said, her voice dropping. I want him to admit it. I want everyone to know he didn't build it. I want his reputation. Good, Alistair slapped the armrest. Then we don't attack his wallet. We attack the IPO. Alistair signalled to Thorne, who stepped forward and placed a thick binder on the table between them. In 2 weeks, Paystream goes public on the New York Stock Exchange. The valuation is projected at $20 billion. Michael stands to make $8 billion personally. But, Alistair paused, tapping the binder, the company's valuation is based entirely on the proprietary algorithm, the one you wrote. The one he patented, Clara reminded him. Yes, but here is the twist, Alistair said. Thorne's team did a forensic audit of the code Michael is currently using. It seems Michael tried to update your work last year to handle cryptocurrency integration. He was arrogant. He didn't understand the foundational architecture you built. He introduced a flaw, a dormant bug. Clara's eyes widened. Her mind raced back to the code structure. The redundancy loop. If the transaction volume exceeds a certain threshold. The encryption key destabilizes, Alistair finished. It's a ticking time bomb. If Paystream goes public and the volume spikes, as it will on opening day, the system won't just crash. It will expose user data. It will be the biggest data breach in fintech history. Clara stared at the fire. He doesn't know. He has surrounded himself with yes men and Jessica Vane, who knows nothing of coding. No one dares tell him the foundation is rotten. He thinks it's perfect because he thinks he's a genius. Alistair leaned back. You have 2 choices, Clara. Choice A, we sue him now for the assets. He settles, you get rich, he fixes the bug quietly, and he becomes a billionaire. And choice B? Choice B, you let the IPO proceed. You let him walk onto that stage. You let him ring the opening bell. And at the exact moment the market opens, we file a frantic public injunction. Not for divorce money, but an intellectual property emergency injunction claiming that the code is stolen and dangerous. We attach the proof of the bug. We prove that you are the only one who knows how to fix it. The stock will tank, Clara whispered. The IPO will collapse. He will lose everything, Alistair said calmly. Not just the money, the trust, the reputation. The investors will sue him for fraud. The SEC will investigate him. He will be radioactive. The room fell silent. The crackling of the logs sounded like gunshots. It was a nuclear option. It was total war. Clara looked at her hands. Hands that had scrubbed floors in Astoria last week. Hands that had built a billion-dollar algorithm 5 years ago. He destroyed my name, Clara said softly. He made the world think I was a leech. If I do this, I prove I was the source. You prove you are the Titan, Alistair corrected. But you must be ready. The media will descend on you. He will attack you with everything he has left. You need to be armor-plated. Clara stood up. The fatigue was gone. The hesitation was gone. She felt a cold, jagged clarity. I don't have anything to wear for a war, Sir Alistair, she said. Alistair smiled. Thorne has arranged for a stylist from Milan to arrive in the morning, and a team of attorneys from Quinn Emanuel is flying in tonight to prep you for the deposition. We have 2 weeks to turn you into the CEO you should have been. Clara looked at the fire one last time. She imagined Michael's face, smug and confident, holding his glass of scotch. Let's get to work, she said. The library of the Graham estate had been transformed into a war room. For 10 days, the heavy oak tables were buried under mountains of depositions, code printouts, and forensic accounting reports. The air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and expensive paralegal colognes. Clara sat at the head of the table. She hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night since arriving in Zurich. Her eyes were rimmed with red, but the fog of depression that had clouded her mind in Queens was gone. In its place was a sharp, vibrating focus. Across from her sat Elias Thorne and a woman named Veronica Sharp, the lead litigator from Quinn Emanuel. Sharp lived up to her name. She was a razor-thin woman with a bob cut so precise it looked like it could cut glass. She didn't treat Clara like a victim. She treated her like a hostile witness. "Do it again," Sharp commanded, not looking up from her notes. "I signed the divorce papers because I just wanted to leave," Clara said, her voice steady. "Objection." "Weak," Sharp snapped, slamming a pen down. "If you say that in front of a judge, you look like a woman who made a bad deal and has seller's remorse. The defense will eat you alive. Michael's lawyers will paint you as a bitter ex-wife, looking for a payout because her checking account ran dry." "Why did you sign, Clara?" Clara clenched her jaw. "Because he threatened me." "Hearsay." "Prove it." "He told me he would drain me in legal fees." "Common tactic. Not illegal. Try again." Clara slammed her hand on the table. "Because I didn't know he had stolen my life's work. Because I trusted him when he said the company was his. I signed under duress caused by fraudulent concealment of intellectual property." The room went silent. Sharp looked up slowly, a predatory smile forming on her lips. "Better. But you're still pleading. You're still asking for permission to be angry. You are the architect, Clara. Stop talking like the tenant." For the next 3 days, they dismantled Clara Jenkins. They stripped away the apology in her voice. They trained her to look at a document, not as a tragedy, but as evidence. They walked her through the intricacies of the code she had written, forcing her to recall every variable, every loop, every logic gate. By the end of the week, Clara wasn't just remembering the code, she was inhabiting it. She realized that PayStream wasn't Michael's machine. It was her mind, digitized, and seeing how he had corrupted it with his clumsy updates made her sick. Then came the visual transformation. Sir Alistair didn't believe in makeovers for vanity. He believed in semiotics, the language of symbols. You cannot walk into the Southern District of New York wearing a department store suit, Alistair told her on the final evening. They were sitting on the terrace, overlooking the dark, placid waters of Lake Zurich. "Clothes are language. Michael will be wearing navy blue, trustworthy, solid, corporate. You need to be the opposite." A team of tailors had arrived from Milan that morning. They didn't bring floral prints or soft pastels. They brought structure. When Clara stepped out of the dressing room, she barely recognized the reflection in the gilded mirror. The suit was white, a blinding, stark white wool crepe. The jacket was tailored sharply at the waist with structured shoulders that gave her a silhouette of power. The trousers were wide-legged, moving with a fluid grace. She wore no jewelry, except for a pair of simple diamond studs Alistair had loaned her. Her hair, previously pulled back in a messy bun, had been cut into a sleek, shoulder-length style that framed her face like a helmet. She didn't look like a housewife. She didn't look like a divorcee. She looked like a CEO. "How do you feel?" Thorne asked, standing in the doorway. Clara smoothed the lapel of the white jacket. She looked at her eyes in the mirror. They were cold. "I feel like a demolition expert," she said. That night, before they left for the airfield, Sir Alister handed her a final file. It was a single sheet of paper. "This is the kill switch," he said, "the technical analysis of the bug. Once this is entered into the public record, the stock exchanges will halt trading on Paystream immediately to protect investor capital. The moment you file this, Michael is finished. There is no going back." Clara took the paper. "He will hate me for the rest of his life." "He already hates you, Clara," Alister said softly. "He hates you because he needs you. And for a man like Michael, need is the ultimate humiliation. Go and show him that he was right to be afraid." New York City, the day of the IPO. The morning sun hit the facade of the New York Stock Exchange, bathing the columns in gold. It was a perfect day for a coronation. Banners hung from the street lamps. Paystream, the future of money. Inside the VIP balcony, Michael Sterling was vibrating with adrenaline. He checked his reflection in the glass partition. His Brioni suit was flawless. His teeth were white. He looked down at the trading floor, where traders were already gathering, eyeing the screens. The opening price was set at $45 a share. Analysts predicted it would hit $80 by noon. "You look like $1 trillion, Jessica whispered, sliding her arm through his. She was wearing a red dress, aggressive and bright. She squeezed his bicep. "It's happening, Michael. We won." Michael took a deep breath. "Did you hear anything from the lawyers?" "About Clara?" Jessica laughed, a tinkling, dismissive sound. "Not a peep. She's probably in some diner in Queens, crying into her eggs. She's gone, Michael. Forget her." Michael nodded, but a tiny knot of anxiety tightened in his stomach. It was too quiet. He had expected a text, a drunk dial, a plea for money. But silence. Silence was unpredictable. "5 minutes to the bell," a floor manager shouted. Michael stepped up to the podium. The cameras flashed, a blinding wall of white light. He waved. He felt like a god. Meanwhile, at Teterboro Airport, the Gulfstream G700 touched down with a screech of tires. The moment the stairs lowered, 2 black SUVs pulled up to the wing. Clara descended the stairs. The wind whipped her white trousers. But she didn't flinch. Thorne was right behind her, carrying the briefcase containing the injunction and the evidence. "We have 45 minutes to get to the courthouse," Thorne said, checking his watch. "Traffic is heavy on the FDR." "Get us there," Clara said, sliding into the back of the lead SUV. The driver didn't hesitate. He activated a siren, illegal for civilians, but money buys many things, including the appearance of authority, and tore out of the airport gate. Inside the car, Clara opened her iPad. She pulled up the live stream of CNBC. There was Michael, smiling, holding the gavel. The ticker at the bottom of the screen read, "Paystream IPO, anticipated to break records." "Look at him," Clara whispered. "He has no idea." "He's standing on a trap door," Thorne said, "and you're about to pull the lever." The Southern District of New York Courthouse. 9:28 a.m. The SUV screeched to a halt in front of the massive stone steps of the courthouse. A small army of photographers was already there, tipped off by an anonymous source, Alister's PR team, that something historic was about to happen involving the Paystream IPO. When the car door opened, the flashbulbs erupted. But they weren't expecting Clara. They were expecting a corporate rival, or maybe a regulator. When Clara stepped out, the crowd went silent for a split second. The white suit was luminous against the grey stone of the city. She looked tall, imposing, and utterly foreign to the woman they had seen in the tabloids months ago. "Who is that?" a photographer shouted. Is that the ex-wife?" "It's Clara Sterling." Clara ignored them. She walked up the steps with a stride that ate up the ground. Thorne flanked her, using his briefcase to gently part the sea of reporters. "Mrs. Sterling! Mrs. Sterling! Are you here to stop the IPO?" A reporter from Bloomberg thrust a microphone in her face. Clara stopped. She turned to the camera, her face calm, her eyes piercing. "My name is Clara Jenkins," she said, her voice clear and amplified by the microphones, "and I am not here to stop the IPO. I am here to report a crime." She turned and marched through the revolving doors. The NYSE. 9:30 a.m. Clang! 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 Michael brought the gavel down on the sounding block. The bell rang out across the trading floor. Confetti rained down from the ceiling. The room erupted in cheers. On the big screen, the ticker symbol PIST appeared. "Open at $48, someone shouted. 52, 60. Michael hugged Jessica. He grabbed the champagne glass handed to him. "To us," he shouted over the roar. "To the Empire." He looked up at the giant monitor that displayed CNBC, expecting to see his own face. Instead, the feed cut away from the floor. The breaking news banner flashed in urgent red. The anchor's face was pale. "We are interrupting the coverage of the Paystream IPO with breaking news from the Southern District of New York. A massive emergency injunction has just been filed against Michael Sterling and Paystream Holdings." Michael froze. The champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the balcony floor. The camera on the screen cut to the steps of the courthouse. There was Clara, looking like an avenging angel in white, standing next to Veronica Sharp. The anchor continued, reading rapidly. The plaintiff, Clara Jenkins, former wife of Mr. Sterling, alleges that the core source code of Paystream was stolen from her. Furthermore, the filing includes a technical audit claiming the current software contains a catastrophic security flaw that puts all user data at risk. The presiding judge has granted an immediate temporary restraining order on the stock trade pending an SEC review. On the trading floor below, the cheering stopped. It happened like a wave, silence spreading from the traders near the screens to the back of the room. "Trading halted," a floor official bellowed. "Code red. Trading halted on PIST." The numbers on the big board froze. The graph, which had been shooting upward like a rocket, flatlined. Michael stared at the screen. He saw Clara's face. She wasn't smiling. She was looking directly into the camera lens, and it felt like she was looking right into his soul. "It's a lie!" Michael screamed, grabbing the railing. "It's a lie! She's crazy! She's broke!" Jessica pulled away from him, her face draining of color. She checked her phone. "Michael, the news. It's trending. Our Clara Jenkins. Hawks a Paystream fraud. They're posting the patent documents. They're posting the code comparisons." Michael fumbled for his phone. His hands were shaking so badly he dropped it. "She can't do this," he wheezed. "She signed the NDA. She signed the agreement." But deep down, he knew. He looked at the faces of the bankers surrounding him. A minute ago, they looked at him with adoration. Now, they looked at him with horror. They were backing away, physically distancing themselves from the blast radius. The elevator doors behind the podium opened. Two men in dark suits stepped out. They weren't bankers. They were FBI agents from the Financial Crimes Division, accompanied by SEC regulators. Michael turned back to the screen. Clara was walking away from the microphones, disappearing into the courthouse. She hadn't just stopped the money. She had burned the temple to the ground. The phone in Jessica's hand buzzed. It was a notification from the bank. Alert. Assets frozen. pursuant to federal court order. Michael slumped against the railing, the confetti still settling around his feet like grey ash. The party was over. The silence in the penthouse at 432 Park Avenue was different now. It wasn't the silence of controlled, air-conditioned power. It was the silence of a tomb. 3 weeks had passed since the IPO imploded on live television. In that time, the world had turned upside down. The SEC investigation had frozen Michael Sterling's personal assets. The board of directors of Paystream, facing a class action lawsuit from investors who felt defrauded, had voted unanimously to oust him as CEO. Michael sat on the same bespoke Italian sofa, but the room around him was changing. Movers in blue coveralls were systematically packing away the life he had built. They wrapped the crystal vases in bubble wrap. They took the paintings off the walls, leaving rectangular ghosts on the plaster. The elevator chimed. Michael didn't look up. He expected his lawyer. Instead, the clicking of high heels echoed on the marble floor. Rapid, angry clicks. Jessica Vane stormed into the living room, trailing a set of Louis Vuitton luggage. She wasn't wearing the red dress of victory anymore. She was wearing a trench coat and sunglasses, though it was overcast outside. "The cards are declined, Michael," she spat, not bothering to look at him. All of them. The black card, the platinum, even the joint account. Michael looked at her, his eyes hollow. He hadn't shaved in days. "It's a temporary freeze, Jess. The lawyers are filing a motion on Monday. Once we clear the fraud charges—" "There is no we," Jessica screamed, her composure finally shattering. "You told me you wrote the code. You told me she was a nobody. Now I'm being subpoenaed. My face is on every news channel as an accomplice to corporate fraud. I can't even get a table at Le Bernardin." She signaled to the mover to take her bags. "Jessica." Michael stood up, his voice cracking. "You said we were partners." "I was a partner in a billion-dollar company," she said, cold, pulling her sunglasses down to look at him with pure disgust. "Not a partner in a federal indictment. You're radioactive, Michael. You're done." She turned and walked into the elevator. The doors slid shut. Michael was alone in the empty apartment. The view of the city, once his kingdom, now looked like a prison of glass and steel. 2 days later, the final act played out not in a penthouse, but in a conference room on the 45th floor of the Quinn Emanuel building in Midtown. The table was long and polished, reflecting the grey sky outside. On one side sat Michael, flanked by a court-appointed attorney, because his high-priced legal team had resigned due to non-payment. On the other side sat Veronica Sharp and Elias Thorne, and at the head of the table sat Clara. She wore a navy suit today. Business, serious, commanding. She watched Michael enter. He looked smaller. His shoulders were slumped, his suit ill-fitting, as if he had lost 20 pounds of ego in 20 days. He couldn't meet her eyes. "Let's make this simple," Sharp began, sliding a document across the table. "The SEC is willing to offer leniency on the criminal fraud charges if you admit that the intellectual property belonged to Ms. Jenkins and that you knowingly filed a false patent." "If I admit that," Michael whispered, his voice raspy, "I lose the company. I lose the patent rights. I lose everything." "You have already lost the company, Mr. Sterling," Thorne said calmly. "The only thing you are negotiating for now is whether you spend the next 10 years in a federal prison or a summer house." Michael looked up, confused. "What?" Clara spoke for the first time. Her voice was not loud, but it commanded the room instantly. "I am taking control of Paystream," Clara said. "The investors have agreed to reinstate the IPO under a new name, Architect Systems. I will fix the code. I will secure the user data. I will save the valuation. She leaned forward. "But I don't want to destroy you, Michael. That requires energy I'd rather spend on my business." She tapped the document. "This is a settlement agreement. You transfer all IP rights to me. You admit to the fraud publicly to clear the company's name. In exchange, I will drop the civil suit for the stolen assets. I will not press for jail time." Michael looked at the paper. It was a lifeline, a humiliating, devastating lifeline. "And," Clara continued, a small, ironic ghost of a smile touching her lips, "I am feeling generous. I will grant you a monthly stipend for 3 years, and you can have the summer cottage in Maine." Michael froze. The air left his lungs. It was the exact offer he had made her 6 months ago. The summer cottage, the stipend, the pity. "You can't be serious," he whispered. "I am very serious," Clara said, picking up her pen. "It's a fair offer, Michael. You can fight this, drag it out, and watch me bury you in legal fees until you're selling your watch to buy groceries. Or you can sign, take the house in Maine, disappear quietly. Keep your dignity." The words hit him like physical blows. She was mirroring him perfectly, reflecting his own cruelty back at him with dazzling precision. Michael looked around the room. He saw no sympathy. He saw only the cold, hard reality of the world he used to think he owned. He picked up the pen. His hand shook. He signed the document. "It's done," Sharp said, snatching the paper away before the ink was dry. Michael stood up. He looked at Clara one last time. He wanted to say something, to apologize, to scream, to beg, but he found he had no words left. He was obsolete. He walked out of the conference room, a man erased by his own arrogance. Clara stood up and walked to the window. Below, the city of New York moved in its chaotic, rhythmic flow. She saw a yellow cab weaving through traffic. She saw the people rushing to work. "It's over," Thorne said gently, standing beside her. "Sir Alistair sends his regards. He says he knew you had it in you." "I didn't," Clara admitted softly. "Not at first." She touched the cold glass. She wasn't just Clara Jenkins, the ex-wife, anymore. She was Clara Jenkins, the CEO, the architect. She turned back to the room where the future was waiting in a stack of fresh contracts. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice bright and clear. "Cancel the car. I think I'll walk. It's a beautiful day to start over." Clara's journey wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclamation. She proved that your worth isn't defined by the person who left you, but by what you carry inside you. Michael thought he could strip her of her value because he took her money, but he forgot that he couldn't take her mind. In the end, the woman who accepted nothing walked away with everything that mattered: her name, her creation, and her self-respect. It's a powerful reminder to never let anyone convince you that you are finished, just because you are starting over. Sometimes, rock bottom is just the solid foundation you need to build an empire. What an incredible turnaround. It just goes to show that silence is sometimes the loudest scream. If you loved Clara's transformation from the penniless ex-wife to the CEO in the white suit, hit that like button right now. And I want to know from you, have you ever been underestimated by someone, only to prove them wrong later? Tell me your story in the comments below. I love reading them. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story of justice and karma. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.